You motherfucking tube. It's your boy Rollo Jr. Man, I just want to fuck, man. You know what I'm saying? The YouTube boxing community is revved up like a motherfucker. Thank you, Floyd Mayweather Jr. Mr. Money May. But in this one, man, this vid, I wanna challenge everybody also to just do some history on boxing. And I swear, man, everybody's perspective of so much shit will be so different. Just do some history on boxing. And I ain't talking about go back and watch some old fights. I'm talking about check out some books. Read some motherfucking books. You know what I'm saying? I think that's probably why I always have a slightly different opinion. You know what I'm saying? Because I hear people, you know, like people say the eye test or what I see or this, that, and the other. But see, when you do your history, when you learn a little history about certain shit, it gives you a different perspective on what it is that you're actually seeing. You know, I had a book that old cat gave me one time, and I wish I still had this book, but it got fucked up in a basement, flooded one time, and I had it in a box with some other books and some tapes and stuff, but the book got messed up. But I want to say it was called The History of the Sweet Science, something like that. And basically what it was it talked about just boxing from the beginning, and how when you know the sport first started, or even became a sport, before it was even a sport, it was just like a spectator thing where people would come and they would watch two motherfuckers who were forced to fight. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes there were slaves, and sometimes it was some landowner or some family dude fighting another landowner or some other shit, or somebody who worked on the land or something. And basically, two motherfuckers fought until the one person couldn't fight no more. And that's how long they fought. Then they started to try and implement rules. And when you added rules to it, they started to develop strategies. You know, they started to say, toe the line. You had to toe the line. If you got knocked down or you knocked out and you couldn't get back up and toe the line, then that's when the fight was over. Then they started making rounds. A round would be until somebody got knocked down. So they fought until somebody got knocked down, and then that was a round. You go to your corner, you get you some water and shit and whatever, and you go back out for the next round. The next round might be 20 minutes. Then eventually they started wearing gloves and mouth guards. Then the Marcus of Queensberry rules came around where they started making rounds, being 3 minutes. So on and so forth. So as the sport became a sport and started to change, so did different strategies. But the whole essence of it began when two men would fight until one man couldn't fight no more. So you get to the point of the Marcus and Queensberry rules where you had 3-minute rounds and you had gloves, which weren't padded for shit, but you fought 3-minute rounds until somebody couldn't fight no more. And eventually the fights started to get so long and so boring. That's when they started making the round rules, the round limits. I think the first round limit was like 20 or 25. And then eventually they kept bringing it down because the fights were still so long and so boring. And once they got it down to around 15 rounds or so, the whole purpose was to pack the 38 or 40 rounds that some people fought. If we could pack all of the action that y'all fight over 40 rounds, maybe we can put that shit into 15 rounds and we have more exciting fights. So right around the turn of the century, right before the turn of the century, the late 1800s, you started to have, I believe, all this is off the top. I didn't go back and actually do precise research, which I probably should have done, but I can probably do that. Maybe I'll get with Blood Boxing or something, man, and fuck with him and see if we can come up with some shit. But I believe it was right before the turn of the century, very, very, very late 1800s, is when the current system that we have now was kind of implemented. So it was 3-minute rounds, boxing gloves, and limit 20 rounds, I believe. You couldn't hit people while they were down, shit like that. When after the turn of the century, you know what I'm saying, you had white guys who were heavyweights and they wouldn't fight black guys. And, we all know the story of Jack Johnson and shit. You know what I'm saying? We all know the story of Jack Johnson. And the heavyweight champ was always looked at as the baddest motherfucker on the planet. And the heavyweight champ was never like this humongous guy. The heavyweight champ was 180 pounds, 190 pounds. You know what I'm saying? You was fucking huge at 200. And you only had like 6-7 weight classes. You know what I mean? And weight classes started to develop. So then you had different styles of fighters. You know what I'm saying? Certain guys started to come around and fight different styles. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes certain fighters got booed like a motherfucker because their style wasn't used. Spectators weren't used to seeing some of the shit that they seen. So over time, certain styles develop, but the spectators always were drawn to the knockout, just like they are now. It's still that case. You know what I'm saying? People are still drawn to a knockout. Nothing elevates a fighter like a knockout does. So we come to more modern times. The Joe Lewis's and Sugar Ray Robinsons of the world, where Joe Louis was such a specimen because he knocked motherfuckers out. You know what I'm saying? He knocked a lot of guys out, And interestingly enough, when I was reading Joe Lewis's biography, he talked about how he fought one dude and the guy kind of danced around the ring and Joe Louis couldn't hardly catch up with him. And he started to laugh at the guy because he knew that this guy wasn't going to win the fighting the way that he was fighting, no matter what he did. So around the 8th or the 9th round or something, he realized that all the dude wanted to really do was not get fucked up. All he wanted to do is not get hurt. At some point in time, I guess he noticed that the guy realized he wasn't going to win the fight either, especially when the crowd started booing. The judges definitely weren't going to give him the fight because he wasn't fighting in a style that was the essence of the sport, which was you fight until somebody couldn't fight. You know what I'm saying? That's why you had a lot of knockouts back in the day. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes it wasn't necessarily a knockout. You had a lot of fights where the corner would throw in a towel because motherfuckers didn't want to give up. And sometimes, guys just quit. Ain't nothing wrong with that. And the reason I bring that up is because, see, people go back and look at old fights and old tapes and wonder, well, how did they say that this dude was so good and he fighting like this? Well, they had to fight that way because in those times, the Floyd Mayweathers and the Islam De Laras and the Guillermo Rigondeaux, they got shunned upon. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, no matter how good of a knockout artist you were, you couldn't knock out everybody. But you couldn't fight that style, that what people would call the pure boxer style, could back in the day. Now, you could fight it. You could fight that style. You could use that style and implement it and all of that. You could do that. But your ass was always going to stay at the bottom. You wasn't going to draw big crowds. You wasn't going to make a lot of money. You know what I'm saying? That's why a lot of fighters fought the way that they fought. So when you go back and look at a Sugar Ray Robinson tape or a fucking Sam Langford or Joe Louis or somebody like that, they fought in that style mainly because they had to. Some guys racked up records like a motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? But you never really heard of them because nobody gave a fuck about some dude outpointing a guy fight after fight after fight. That was just the nature of the sport. It's the same way, you know what I'm saying, in baseball. People dig home runs. Home run hitters always get a lot of publicity and pub, and a lot of people want to see home run hitters. You know what I'm saying? Same way in basketball. It's cool to be a solid spot-up jump shooter, but motherfuckers want to see LeBron James catching alley hoops off the back of off the backboard and shit. You know what I'm saying? That's what people want to see. That's the spectator, the supply and demand and shit. You know what I'm saying? So now we live in an era where, the top draw in boxing is a points unanimous decision guy. You know what I'm saying? And the fucked up thing about it is this. Floyd Mayweather is a hell of a boxer. Don't get me wrong. Don't get it twisted. And I appreciate some of the things that he do in the ring. But what we fail to realize, when people and everybody want to crown him the greatest fighter of all time, the reason that he can fight that way, the reason that he can even be in the ring and make bukus of money, is because he doesn't have to change. He doesn't have to try and go for knockouts. He can go in and fight that style and win a fight in that manner, and in his next fight command a bunch of money again. If nobody was paying attention to him, nobody gave a fuck. If we were still watching Tyson and Holyfield and paying attention to the heavyweights, nobody would give a fuck about Floyd Mayweather and the style that he fights. He would have had to change his style. There ain't nothing that anybody can tell me that Sugar Ray Leonard couldn't have fought in the same manner, or Sugar Ray Robinson, or Pernell Whitaker. You know what I'm saying? Pernell Whitaker did to an extent. You know what I'm saying? But because of him and the way that he fought, it was hard for him to command a lot of money. He was in big fights, but never the Sugar Ray Leonard versus Tommy Hearns type of fights. And you had a long fucking list of significant champions throughout the history of boxing. And these motherfuckers stayed the champion until somebody knocked their ass out. You know what I'm saying? Like Joe Louis, Sugar Ray Robinson. Somebody didn't get split decision wins on those guys. You know what I'm saying? If you look at their L's, for the most part, they got knocked out in those fights. You know what I'm saying? And most of the time it was later on in their career. But usually those guys got knocked out. You know what I'm saying? So it baffles me that people just anoint Floyd Mayweather the greatest fighter of all time and not do any research and history. You know what I'm saying? I can't say that because I cannot allow myself to anoint a guy the greatest fighter of all time by beating virtually nothing but Mexicans. And people want to throw Zab Judah and fucking Shane Mosley in there, right? Because those are only two motherfucking brothers damn near you can throw in there definitely in the last 10 years. You know what I'm saying? Pretty much. So the fucked up and the craziest thing about it is this is the craziest shit. Like, before Zab Judah, before Shane Mosley fought Floyd Mayweather, he had lost like 4 or 5 fights. But for some reason, those guys that beat Shane Mosley never ended up fighting Floyd Mayweather. And then the thing that fucks me up too is when people say, well, Floyd would have beat Margarito, so we didn't see him beat that style before. Or he would have beat Costa Tszyu, because we didn't see him beat that style before. And this is when I say you have to know some history about any sport when you start to say shit like that. And for my old heads, you know what I'm saying, who would know what the fuck I'm talking about, who in the fuck would have thought that Orlando Salido would have knocked out Juan Manuel Lopez not once but twice? Who in their right mind seen Shane Mosley losing to Vernon Forrest? Not once but twice. Even more baffling than that, who in the fuck seen Vernon Forrest losing to Ricardo Mayorga not once but twice? Who seen that shit coming? How about Buster Douglas and motherfucking Mike Tyson? Oh, wait a minute. How about Michael Moore and Evander Holyfield? Who seen that shit coming? What about Hasim Rahman and Lennox Lewis? Shall I keep going? Or I could even go to other sports. Who in the fuck, who in modern day time would have told you that Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, Gary Payton, and Karl Malone, and somebody else, Derek Fisher, starting, that's your starting 5 for the Los Angeles Lakers, would lose to the Detroit Pistons with Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton, Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace, and Tayshaun Prince. Virtually damn near got swept. The only reason the motherfuckers won one game because Kobe Bryant made some crazy ass almost half court 3-pointer to force the game into overtime, and they won that game. Who would have thought that The New England, 50 touchdowns in one season. Randy Moss, 27 touchdowns in the same season, scoring 47 points a game. 19-0, 17, 18-0, New England Patriots would come into the Super Bowl and lose to the 10-6 New York Giants. Who in the fuck seen that coming? Who? If that shit had never happened, you would have never been able to convince me that those Giants would have beat those Patriots. And it's a whole bunch of folks who'd say that as well. How about this? You remember when Hopkins and Trinidad were supposed to fight? And it was supposed to be like September the 12th or 13th or some shit. And they ended up fighting the following week. So just imagine had that fight just been canceled altogether. You know what I'm saying? Because it was at Madison Square Garden right after 9/11. So just imagine that fight had just got canceled, scrapped altogether. And those two had never fought. You know what I'm saying? Trinidad coming off of his big knockout over William Joppy. And Bernard Hopkins coming off of his win over Keith Holmes. And now here we go with the finals. And let's just say the fight got scrapped. Do you know how many people would have thought that Trinidad would have won that fight? There would have been some people who would have said Hopkins would have won. Don't get it twisted. But can you imagine the slew of people who would have fucking swore up and down that Trinidad would have knocked out Bernard Hopkins? Can y'all imagine that shit? So, I say all that to say this. We always say shit like, oh man, this dude ain't ready. Or, this dude got flaws. Or I see holes in his game. Or I see shit that can be exploited. Everybody got flaws. Even Floyd Mayweather. There are holes in his game. You know what I'm saying? Like Paul Counter pointed out about Keith Thurman. He shuffles his feet and he bounces around. And he's kind of a dead giveaway. Well, the thing about Floyd Mayweather is he kind of does similar shit. You know what I'm saying? He kind of lets you know that he's getting ready to throw the same punch that he's always throwing. But I guess if you're going to fight the same type of motherfucker, you should always throw the same type of punch. If it won you the last fight and the fight before that and the fight before that, why in the fuck should you change? Matter of fact, if you got a strategy that works from this dude and he got that style, why not get another dude with that style, implement the same strategy, and keep doing that shit, and keep playing that rerun, keep showing that same show over until people get tired of watching that show. I ain't mad at him. Ah, shit. Get your money, bro. But I'm not necessarily a fan of Floyd Mayweather. I'm a fan of the sport. I'm a fan of boxing. Nothing excites me more than a good matchup. Danny Garcia and Lucas Matisse. That was a fucking matchup. That was a good ass matchup. I remember back in the day where I would watch fights. I would get excited about a fight because I didn't know who was going to win. When Evander Holyfield and Riddick both fought, I didn't know who the fuck was going to win that fight before the fight happened. I know who I wanted to win, but I had no clue who would win. I remember watching motherfucking Mildred Taylor versus Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. I almost cried when that motherfucker waved that fight off. I'm dead serious, yo. I almost cried. I'm gonna tell you another fight where I almost cried. Almost tears of joy, and I bullshit you not. Jose Luis Castillo and Diego Corrales. And I was excited about that fight. I didn't know who would win. I figured that Castillo would win. I'm like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? He gave Mayweather a tough fight. So I know he can pretty much deal with a slick style. You know what I'm saying? He's well versed. You know what I mean? Mayweather didn't beat him up. You know what I'm saying? He won the second fight. I personally believe that Castillo won the first fight. Me and my pops, we sat there and watched and we thought that Castillo pulled it out. But it was so close that I can't hardly say that it was a robbery that Mayweather won. Not at all. You know what I'm saying? Not at all. So, I'm getting ready to watch this fight. And about the third round, I'm like, wow. These motherfuckers is putting hands on each other. Damn. This is some shit. And you can see that these motherfuckers wasn't backing down a bit. And when that 10th round came around and Corrales hit the deck, started dropping his mouthpiece out, I started clapping. And the chick I was with, she was just looking at me like I was fucking a ghost or something. And I was like, damn, this was a good ass fight. You know what I'm saying? I ain't even mad at you, Corrales. You put up a good ass fight, but you know what I'm saying? He got your ass. I mean, Castillo just got the best of you, bro. And no quicker than I can get the fucking thought out of my brain, this motherfucker started landing left hooks on Castillo and had him up against the ropes. And I was flabbergasted. Up until that point, that was the best fight I had ever seen in my life. And I watched that shit. I had that shit on DVD and I watched that shit over and over and over and over again. Oh my God, I watched that shit over and over again. Until sitting with my pops and we watched Israel Vasquez, Rafael Marquez won. And I'm like, God damn, these motherfuckers is getting it on. And even though these two guys were beating the shit out of each other, it wasn't a brawl. They were very sound technically, throwing sharp punches. And you can strategically see guys making adjustments throughout the fight. So even though it had all the makings of a brawl, if you know what you were watching, you can see the technical, the abilities, the boxing that was going on inside the ring, outside of the fact that they were both fucking each other up. Second fight comes around, and I'm thinking to myself, second fight gotta be shit. There's no way they're gonna fight anything close to what they did that last fight. They did. Just as good as the first fight. And then that third fight came around, and I thought that I would never see anything close to Castillo Corrales again. But I think that third fight was the best fight I had ever seen in my life. You know what I'm saying? But both of those guys, right, they had shorter careers than most, I suppose. You know what I'm saying? But it doesn't really equate to having a short career. He had shoulder problems and shit. I mean, look at Juan Manuel Marquez. This motherfucker almost 40 years old. You know what I'm saying? He fights that same style. You know what I'm saying? He's still doing it. Orlando Salido, he's pretty old. You know what I'm saying? Doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna have a short career. But you did chose boxing as a profession. You know what I'm saying? That's what it is, you know? I don't know. Fuck. My thing is this though. In conclusion, I'm gonna say this. In all of the boxing that I've watched in my life, all of the fights, I've watched, Barrera Morales. I had that shit on tape. 1, 2, and 3. Shane Mosley, Oscar De La Hoya 1 and 2. I used to watch that quite often. The fight that I watched more than any other fight that I've ever seen. And, this was back, y'all know, 15 years ago now. Or not 15, 14, 12 years ago now. I used to get to the crib all the time, roll me up a joint, drink me a brew, pop my VHS in. Felix Trinidad versus Bernard Hopkins. Now, if you a coach in a motherfucking boxing gym, or you just want to see boxing at its purest form, and I'm not talking about that Floyd Mayweather using your athleticism and reflexes because you fighting some Mexicans and you way quicker and way faster than the motherfuckers type of boxing. I'm talking about the most technically sound and efficient fight that I've ever seen any fighter fight. Some people gonna say that Trinidad was a little guy or whatever the case may be. But if you watch this fight, you will see exactly what I'm talking about. I'm talking about foot movement, spacing, inside fighting, outside fighting, defense, head movement, effective use of a jab, effective use of a right hand, combination punching, ring generalship, everything almost as perfect as you would ever want to see a fighter fight. Bernard Hopkins versus Felix Trinidad was like an instructional video for boxers for me. I probably watched that fight damn near 100 times. Like I said, I would get off work, roll me up a joint, crack me up a brew, and I would just watch that shit. And I would watch it 2-3 times a week for years. I watched that shit. And every time I watched it, I looked at something different. Or I paid attention to certain things. Certain rounds, I would look for certain things. How did Bernard Hopkins set up this punch? How did Felix Trinidad get caught with this one? How did he not see that coming? I watched that shit over and over and over and over again. Analyzed the fuck out of that fight, yo. Now that was some boxing. Y'all motherfuckers want to see some boxing. That's what you go watch. Floyd Mayweather is good. Don't get me wrong. But see, people always want to say that, like, he's using his superior athleticism against guys who have very little athleticism. You know what I'm saying? Very little athleticism. If y'all want to be truthful about it, think about all of his toughest fights. Who were they against? You know what I'm saying? And y'all know who his toughest fight was. Go find that interview with Roger Mayweather. Emmanuel Augustus. He fought here in Detroit at the Joe Louis Arena. He TKO'd him in 9. But oh yes, he was busted up pretty good. He was leaking all over the place. It was a good fight. Damn good fight. You know what I'm saying? I've never seen Floyd fight that hard ever again. Floyd is a hell of a fighter. Fucking masterful boxer. And so is Bernard Hopkins. And he has been for a long time. But you know who ended up beating Bernard Hopkins? It wasn't some Mexican. It was a young ass brother from goddamn Arkansas. You know what I'm saying? Of all places. You know what I mean? Roy Jones on top of the fucking world. This motherfucker done knocked off one of the bum ass heavyweights. Coming from light heavyweight, then knocked off a bum ass heavyweight. You know who knocked him off? A dude I would never thought had a chance against Roy Jones in life. In life, knocked him right the fuck off. Damn. Another brother, right? It wasn't the big Mexican, John Ruiz. He didn't have a shot against Roy Jones, even though he was outweighed by, 35 pounds or so. He didn't have a shot with Roy Jones. Complete annihilation. And I tell you what, Roy Jones beat John Ruiz worse than Floyd Mayweather beat Canelo. So why do people always say that Devin Alexander don't have a chance? Keith Thurman is too green. Are we saying that about Chad Dawson when he fought Bernard Hopkins? Nah. It's certain styles that's gonna beat a Floyd Mayweather, a Roy Jones. It's gonna be a certain style that's gonna beat a Keith Thurman. That's gonna beat a Timothy Bradley. Everybody got somebody out there that's gonna beat them. But if you keep picking the same type of motherfuckers, it ain't even that. It's not even like you fighting a different motherfucker from a different place with a different style, or the same type of motherfucker from the same place with a different style. You fighting the same type of motherfucker from the same place with the same style. And we calling Floyd Mayweather the greatest of all time. Greatest of all time? Come on. Come on, yo. When he beat a Devin Alexander and an Amir Khan, that's going to be better than Victor Ortiz and Robert Guerrero to me. Because it was the same type of shit with De La Hoya and Cotto. Those the same kind of motherfucking fighters. They do the same shit in the ring. The same shit. Please, give me something different. Then I can start saying that he's the greatest ever. Or the best of my time. The best that I've seen. It's so hard to say that shit. If Bernard Hopkins would have discriminated against his own kind, hell, he'd probably be undefeated too. Shit. Shane Mosley too. Shane Mosley done beat a lot of Mexicans in his motherfucking life. But for some reason, for some strange reason, the only people who beat Shane Mosley are not Mexican. And I don't have nothing against Mexican or Mexican fighters. But they are very effective at a certain thing. It's like the NFL. I said this too. You know what I'm saying? Now, if we said who are the best football players, you know what I'm saying, in the NFL, you're going to have some Tom Brady's in there in the top 10. Some Peyton Mannings, and Drew Breeses, and you have a couple of those. But you're not gonna have Peyton Manning playing linebacker or cornerback or safety or guard or wide receiver. You're not gonna have Tom Brady lined up in the backfield. Do you know if Champ Bailey was lined up and he seen, looking across from him, it was Tom Brady, he fucking laughed. He would fucking laugh. Can you imagine Calvin Johnson or Andre Johnson or Deshaun Jackson lined up against Peyton Manning, and that's who was defending him? He ain't gonna look at his quarterback like, motherfucker, if you don't make sure You throw me the ball. Do you see? But they are great football players. But they specialize in something. They do something, a specific job, very well. Same thing with Mexican fighters. They do a specific style, specific thing very well. And Floyd Mayweather does something very well against that style. You know what I'm saying? I'm ranting like a motherfucker. I'm about to eat. Rollo Jenkins, holla at your boy.